Hello, I'm Tom Wilkinson, and welcome to the Thinking in English podcast, a podcast aimed at intermediate to advanced level English learners. How much do you know about the history of your language? Where do the words you use every day come from? And why do you use them? Today's episode will look at the recent news Germany is removing some words of Nazi origins from its phonetic alphabet. Although most Germans were unaware of the history of these terms, the regular use has been considered problematic by many people. Are there any words in your languages that have offensive origins? We'll look at these questions in detail over the rest of this episode. But first, why not follow the Thinking in English Instagram page? Thinking in English podcast, or the link is in the description. It's full of great vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation content. And you definitely should look at our blog, thinkinginenglish.blog, for all transcripts and bonus content. Here is today's vocabulary list. As always, the written list is available in the description of the podcast and also on our blog, thinkinginenglish.blog. To take something for granted. To take something for granted. This is to believe something to be the truth without even thinking about it. For example, I didn't realize you hadn't been to college. I suppose I just took it for granted. Quirk. Quirk. A quirk is an unusual habit or part of someone's personality, or something that is strange or unexpected. For example, there is a quirk in the rules that allows you to invest money without paying tax. Mutually. Mutually. Felt by one or two or more people or groups in the same way. It will be mutually beneficial project. Unintelligible. Unintelligible. Not able to be understood. For example, he muttered something unintelligible. Despicable. Despicable. Very unpleasant or bad, causing strong feelings of dislike. He's a despicable human being. Phonetic. Phonetic. Using special signs to represent the different sounds made by the voice in speech. For example, pronunciations are shown in this dictionary using the International Phonetic Alphabet. Bureaucratic. Bureaucratic. Relating to a system of controlling or managing a country, company, or organization that is operated by a large number of officials. The company was inefficient because it was highly bureaucratic. And finally, notorious. Notorious. If you are notorious, you are famous for something bad. For example, that company is notorious for paying its bills late. How often do you think about your own language? For example, how old is the language you speak? How much has it changed over the years? Where does it come from? How did its vocabulary and grammar develop? For most people, the answers to these questions are normally the same. We rarely, if ever, think about such rules, so most of us can't provide an answer. In fact, I would guess most people take their languages for granted. We use our languages without ever thinking about why and how we use them. Despite this, if you think about a language a little deeper, you quickly begin to realize quirks, intricacies, and even similarities between completely mutually unintelligible vocabularies. Languages are also not static things. They change, evolve, and develop through time. The English that I speak now is not like the English of the past, and likely will not resemble the English of the future. Some of these changes are natural. Changes in society are obviously reflected in language. As we invent new things, we also invent new words. As new ideas develop, new words to describe those ideas also develop. As cultures mix, their languages also mix. On the other hand, some changes in languages are done by people on purpose. Did you know that William Shakespeare, the famous British playwright, is credited with the invention or introduction of over 1,700 words that are still used in English today? Noah Webster, the American who wrote the first great dictionary published in North America in 1828, is actually responsible for many of the spelling differences between British and American English. It was him who removed the U from colour, honour, etc. Importantly, some language changes can occur for controversial or even outright despicable reasons. This has recently been highlighted in Germany. Germany has announced its decision to revamp its phonetic alphabet in order to remove words added by the Nazis over 80 years ago. What is a phonetic alphabet? It is the series of code words that are assigned to each letter of the alphabet to aid communication and avoid confusion, particularly in radio transmissions and telephone calls. The international standard phonetic alphabet is the NATO phonetic alphabet, which uses the words Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie, etc., to help make spelling out words easier. A for Alpha, B for Bravo, F for Foxtrot, T for Tango. Germany has its own equivalent, which is used for the same reasons. But instead of Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie, they use Anton, Bertha, and Caesar. So, what is the controversy with the German phonetic alphabet? Well, before the Nazi dictatorship, some Jewish names were used in the phonetic alphabet, such as D for David, N for Nathan, Z for Zacharias. But the Nazis replaced these with Dora, North Pole, and Zeppelin, and their use has since continued, with most Germans unaware of their anti-Semitic origin. Other Jewish names removed by the Nazis in 1934 were Jacob for the letter J and Samuel for the letter S, which later became Julius and Siegfried. Removing Jewish names from the phonetic alphabet was part of the Nazis' desire to remove and reject Jews from all aspects of German society. Although seemingly a minimal bureaucratic change, the removal of Jewish names was an indication of what the Nazis planned to do to the rest of society. Actually, a few Nazi references were already replaced after World War II, such as Yps for Y, which became Ypsilon. Ypres was a notorious battle in World War I, where many people died, and the Germans first used poison gas. What will replace the current system? Well, this question does not have a simple answer. For now, the pre-1934 version will likely be used until 2022, when a new version should be approved and introduced. The future system might not actually use first names, as the current and past systems used, because the choice of personal names might not reflect the nation's ethnic diversity today. Instead, perhaps German towns and cities might be preferred. The list introduced by the Nazis won't be completely forgotten. It will be presented as an annex to the new list. As news of the change spread, many Germans have stated that they had not been aware of the phonetic alphabet's Nazi history, despite the fact that those terms are known and commonly used in daily life by most people in Germany, and seen as a practical method for spelling out names over the telephone. So here is today's final thought. At the start of this podcast, I talked about how we don't think about our languages in much detail, and how our languages can change both naturally and by people's actions. In Germany, part of their language was altered to remove Jewish traces for political reasons. Yet, most people had no clue about this history. This is not just the case in German. Whatever language you speak, the harder you look, the more problematic vocabulary you can find. It can be a shocking experience to realize that the language you commonly use has racist, sexist, or homophobic origins. But English normally has other more acceptable synonyms that you can easily replace them with. I won't go into detail on the specific origins in this episode, but the phrases long time no see, uppity, and grandfathered in, which are quite commonly used in English, especially long time no see, all have controversial origins that most people don't know about. What is your opinion about this topic? Do you support removing offensive words or words with offensive origins from our vocabularies? Or are you against this? How much do you know about the history of your language? Thank you for listening to today's episode of Thinking in English. Please share with your friends, check out our social media links in the description, and send us a message. We really appreciate all of your feedback and constructive criticism. If you have any ideas for topics, future podcast guests, or other learning formats, please let us know. And please leave us a rating. We're now on Instagram. I'm producing daily content focusing on improving your vocabulary, so make sure you check out the Thinking in English page. Thinking in English podcast on Instagram, or the link is in the description. Instagram is also probably the best way to contact me, so feel free to send a message. All transcripts of the podcast are now available on the Thinking in English blog. Vocabulary lists, comprehension questions, and articles, as well as additional bonus content, are all there for you to read. The link is also in the description, so please check that out as well. Thank you, and see you next time.